All right. So here we are with this wonderful session of hosted by Curated Circle with wonderful speaker and leader Shekhar Vijayan with us. Unfortunately, we ran into tech glitches today, which is as sad as it gets, but that's a part of life, I guess. But happier side is we have Shekhar with all the sunshine and all the knowledge which comes out of his stint as an entrepreneur, as a mentor, as a TEDx speaker, and of course as a wonderful individual, right? So, right, Shekhar, welcome to the show.
Hi, Anupam. So nice to see you. I can see a nice buffet spread right behind you because it's a curated circle. So I'm sure the food and the desserts is also going to be an opportune offering. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to this discussion, and let's start.
Yeah. That's thanks to GeoMeet, though I mean, they're not sponsoring it, so I'm not going to call it out. But thanks to GeoMeet. But yeah, that said, yeah. So Shekhar, we've been talking about this even offline, right? So this entire bit about leadership and how it pans out, right? So what is your definition of a leader? What goes into being a leader? What are the traits of being a leader?
I think leadership, according to me, is quite simple. Leadership is about kindness. Leadership is about empathy. Leadership is about character. Leadership is about displaying character, being vulnerable, being kind, being, creating the right kind of culture. And I think that's what leadership is. Leadership is not about being aspirational. Leadership is not about, going for the gold. Though I believe in the word which says you don't necessarily lose the gold. Leadership is not just about that. Leadership is about kindness. Leadership is about, putting yourself in other people's shoes and trying to think. I think leadership has undergone a complete metamorphosis from the times of management. I believe it's not the same thing right now. Leadership has changed completely, and in the post-pandemic world, I think it's very, very important for leaders, for them to be stand up and be counted. They have to be kind. They have to have a high level of IQ. My bad, I meant EQ, and they have to have great storytelling skills. I think that for me defines leadership.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. I mean, I've been in the corporate world for a couple of decades now. I've had the opportunity to meet, several leaders. And so as they say, right, how do you pick the real ones from the ones that really aren't, right? So what is, how do you really pick and choose and say that, hey, this person is genuinely a real leader? How do you say that?
So I think it all depends on the kind of words the leader uses, the character the leader has, the kind of impact the leader has, the kind of powerful impact. When I say impact, not in terms of position, but in terms of what you say, how you say, when you say, and where you say, and why you say. I think the entire definition of why, where, when, how should change completely. And it's not purely based on position, it's based on the opportunity, based on the moment, it's based on the surrounding and situation. I think the leader should not change at all in terms of how he or she reacts in any given situation. They should be adaptable, of course. They need to be adaptable. I think it boils down to the core concept of core character. If your character is strong, if your character is something which can look at uncertainty in the face and say, you know what, this is leadership and I can take you through this muddled water. I think that for me is leadership. And the reason I keep harping back to characters, I think character is going to be tested, not now. I think the pandemic has taught all of us that characters were tested, right? Leadership characters were tested from moving from an offline circuit to an online circuit like what we have right now to a hybrid model. And true leadership is all about how fast can you ride that wave? How fast can you ride that change? I think that's really going to happen. So I think leadership is all about seeing the change, riding the change, and making the change.
Yeah, very well articulated as always. So the thing is that the styles of leadership, right? So You would find leaders who are who lead by example. You would find leaders who are consultative, democratic by nature. You'd find leaders who are who serve their people, um, and so on, right? So is there a perfect leadership style, or is there a style which is not real, which is really uh, there for the sake of the position, like you said?
I think leadership is about having a servant kind of mindset as a leader. When I say that, it's about, yes, you want to lead, you don't want to bully. It's the right kind of words used. It's also about being collaborative. It's about being collaborative by nature. It's about working in a team wherein you show that you are a part of the team, and wherein you show that, you know what, I can also take on work when it comes down to that. It's about purely leading by example. And if I talk about leadership, if there's one person who can come to my mind, and for the audience here, it would be MS Dhoni. MS Dhoni is a perfect example of a leader, I would say, in the current scenario where he leads by example. He's not exceptionally talented. I would say he's not exceptionally talented as a wicketkeeper or as a batsman, but he delivers when it's needed. I think he understands the culture of his team. And if you notice, everybody in the Chennai Super Kings team is like a clone of MS Dhoni, which basically means most of them are balanced. Most of them have a certain core. And it's not a very flamboyant team. It's not a very charismatic team, but the team gets a job done. I think somewhere charisma, flamboyance all goes for a toss, but I think credibility should take center stage here. So your credibility and your ability to lead from the front also makes a lot of difference.
So, I was going through a couple of notes which I made before coming in for this call, because it's such a vast subject. I thought, why not collect my thoughts? So really, how do you see the blind spots for a leader impacting the situation, right? So a person might be thinking that he or she is the greatest leader on this planet, but behind closed doors, ask his or her team members, and they might just give an opposite view, which may not be the leader's mistake, which is why blind spots come in, right? So what do you do in those situations? What does the leader do? What does a follower do? What happens?
So I think a leader has to be very attentive as a listener. Like, for example, when you're asking me the question, I'm listening to you attentively and looking out for all those blind or silent cues, which basically means that's what a leader does. The superpower of a leader is just the art of listening, which basically means you need to understand what your team members want without them even telling you. And I've told you this earlier too, I think, Anupam, people leave the jobs not because of the salary, not because of the position. People leave the job because of the leaders. We are living in a false world if you think that people leave the jobs because I got more money, or my position is good. No, it's the leader who manages it for them. It's a leader who creates the culture. It's a leader who creates a position. It's a leader who understands what the followers will do. And if you look at world leaders around us, they understand this very, very well. They understand they have an emotional connect to people. And I think now in today's day and age, it's so important for leaders to be clued into what their team needs or wants. It could be something as simple as some time off for some personal work, making sure that the team members are also clued in professionally and personally, are updating their skills, are channelizing all the professional pursuits. I think the leader has to understand all this, and it all boils down to how attentively are you listening, how good are you in understanding body language. That's also important. What are kind of words you use, and how do you reward and recognize your employees, which basically means you treat them like a person, you treat them like one amongst all of you. And I think that really makes a difference. I think the fact that leaders want to lead by example, want to strive to make a difference, and they believe that passion overrides everything. I think it all boils down to this entire circle of influence more than the circle of control.
Yeah, no, definitely. So now how about the leader's consciousness, right? The leader is consciously aware, I'm sure, at all points of time, if something is not right? And there is nothing called perfection, so there will always be something which is not right. So the leader's consciousness is is always there. So how does he use it? How does she implement it to kind of become better?
So I think consciousness, absolutely. I think it boils down to what your core is all about. When I say your core, what's your spiritual quotient, what's your mental quotient, what's your physical quotient. I think as a leader, you have to be on top of things on all these three parameters: your spiritual quotient, mental quotient, and your physical quotient. It could be understanding yourself inside out, being your own best friend, because only if you can understand yourself well can you manage other people. If you don't understand yourself well, if you don't understand your own consciousness, which is basically the left side of the brain or the right side of the brain. As an NLP coach, I understand the subconscious mind which takes us forward in the creative mindset. But it's also important as a leader for you to do these three things at any given point of time, which is your physical strength, your spiritual strength, and your mental strength. If these three things are in place, if these three things are in place and you know why you're doing what you're doing, I think everything falls in place. So you're constantly working because your brain is also working. And you need to give your brain all the mental exercise as much as possible. We talk about physical exercise, but your brain needs all the mental exercise, which basically means as a leader, uh, you need to be comfortable with yourself. That is one. You're also an average of the 5 people you have around you. You can choose your team. You need to choose the right people who are going to work with you. And then you hone their skill sets. It's also important about how you choose, how you guide, how you mentor, how you influence. All those factors are very important. And you need to also lead by example here. So I think it's a mix of everything. Your collective consciousness, what is your aspiration? What do you want to do? What kind of culture do you want to create? Are you in it for the short term or the long term? I think we are living in a world where everything is very short-lived. Attention span is very short-lived. Leaders nowadays are living only for short-term goals. You have seen around us, nobody wants to be in it for the long run. I think that's where character is really important. That's where ethics is really important. That's where certain traits which a leader carries should be very visible for everyone. The kind of words you use, the kind of adjectives you use, the kind of influence you have, and the kind of opportunities you provide.
Sure. So, I literally heard this phrase about someone around 12 years back, right? A dear friend of mine who, so someone said that the person doesn't command leadership, he demands leadership.
Yeah.
So what do you do if you have a person in the ranks who may be your reportee, who may be your peer, who may be your boss, who actually demands but doesn't command naturally leadership because of what he is?
I think the words command and demand has come down, I think, from the military arena. I feel, this command demand word, which is very, I think, aggressive in a certain way. Because I think someday we all thought of the Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People or Napoleon Hill, and it's been come down centuries. I think it's undergone a shift right now. It's not, I don't think it's command or demand. I think it's about how do you nurture leadership? How do you nurture leaders? How do you mentor leaders? How do you grow them? How do you influence them? How do you work with them? How do you create the right mindset? I think more than commanding or demanding, yeah, it's like nowadays we see a lot of politicians around us. They command or demand respect. You don't command or demand respect. If you don't have respect, you will not get respect. As simple as that, right?
Right.
So I think the ball boils. I think that perspective is changing as we see around us, and I think we're all examples of that. We're all living examples of that.
Right. No, that's a wonderful thought. And you see, the entire bit about meritocracy, right? So, I mean, you hear the greatest of greats saying that the best idea should win. And as it were, over the years, I've seen it happening, and I have sometimes also not seen it happening, right? So what happens is, if the best idea wins, you're actually in a very good place to be, right? That business has a bright future. However, what you sometimes unfortunately find is that that in a meeting room or in a boardroom, right, who is saying becomes more important than rather than what is being said, right? So that, I think, ties up to the bit of demanding and commanding. So on that note, how do you see the future being full of whatnot, decentralization, Web3, metaverse, communities with people helping each other, multiplying each other's worth through the collaboration. How do you see all of that adding into leadership and meritocratic leadership?
I think if I have to give an example, I think India is the best example of it. One nation, one world. If that's what we say, right? We are looking at one world. We're not looking at even one nation. We're looking at one world, and we're looking at everybody working together. I think gone are those days of one person leading and influencing and saying this is my way or the highway. It doesn't work now. I think you have to be collaborative because you will always be dealing with people who are more talented than you, who've got more life experience than you, who've got more perspectives than you, irrespective of age. There could be somebody who's 20 years old or 16 years old or 14 years old who must have gone through more than you, what you would have gone in 45 years or 60 years or 50 years of life. And I'm telling you about life perspectives. Life perspectives may not just be about travel. It could be about the bullying aspect. It could be about growing up in a joint family. It could be about growing up in the hinterlands of India, for example, not being used to the city life. It could be about studying in a boys' school, not in a girls' school, so you don't understand how to adjust to society per se. There are so many other things in picture. And that only comes when you understand your team members. So I think leadership has changed phenomenally. And if a leader does not keep his eyes or ears to the ground, he or she will truly fail. Which basically means the leader has to understand his or her team members well. They have to know that everybody who's sitting in front of them knows much more than them. I think IQ was never in doubt. It's all about going to be your EQ. How good is your EQ skills? How good is your emotional quotient? How well do you understand team members? How well do you have gratitude for everything that happens in life? I think there is kindness, there is gratitude. And I think it's all boils down to how much more do you want to give? You want to give with the objective of learning or unlearning or relearning. And it also harks back to the point that when you are in the conference room, there is always somebody who will come up with the right position or with the right statement because of his or her position. I think more than anything else, now we are living in a world where the conference room or the town halls are not just a place where it's a one-to-many conversation, right? Like as we talk, we've got 45 or 50 people listening to us. The point is that's leadership for you, right? You're not just having conversation, you're having a perspective. And your perspective can change based on your situation, I believe. It can change based on your environment. It can change based on your situation you're dealing with in life right now, your family, your aspirations, the city you're in, the town you're in, the village you're in, and what you want to achieve in life. I think that why is very important.
Yeah. And, I mean, how do you look at a leader? You mentioned an example of MS Soni, of course, you covered it already, but just to double click on that, how do you really look at a leader? Does he or she have to be the most capable? Can he or she be vulnerable at times?
Yeah.
Is he or she allowed to express the vulnerability, and so on?
I think a leader is somebody with whom you can have a cup of tea with. Yeah, segue. Huh? Anupam, please, you also hold an imaginary cup and show we're having a cup of tea together.
I have it right here. I'm not to.
Yeah. That is on cue. But I think a leader is somebody who is honest here, who has to be honest, who has to be cerebral, who has to be vulnerable, who also cries with you, also is happy with you, is also sad with you. I think leadership is Superman is not a leader.
Right.
Superman is a leader. As in, you need to have your follies, you need to have your weaknesses in place, and you need to have your failures in place. I feel it's very important as a leader to have failures which are carved in gold. I'm really looking out for a leader. I'm really looking out for a leader whose weaknesses can be put up on a billboard and say, these are my weaknesses. This is what my failures are. And I use these failures in such an effective manner.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they are human, right? A leader doesn't mean that the leader has to be, and for that matter, if like they always say, right, hire people who are smarter than you. So if there's someone out there in your team who's smarter than you and who is smarter than the boss, right, who's kind of adding value, then that doesn't mean that the leader doesn't remain a leader. Like the example you gave of MS Dhoni, that's probably, I mean, there's so many individual contributors who played with him who were probably way more talented than he is, but his task was to bring out the best out of them, right? So which really makes a difference. Now I'll get into a controversial topic now as we draw to the kind of last leg of this discussion. there's this entire thing about forming a coterie, right? So at work or in whenever there are 5 or 10 human beings together, you have any kind of an organization or an association, and there is a leader formally appointed or evolving over time, especially if formally appointed, then there is a sense of everybody saying yes, right? So everybody's
Right.
saying, hey,
Yes, ma'am.
I got the best mentor, man. I can't ask for more. And it is wonderful if it's true. But the sad bit is when you get to the water cooler discussions, the same person is found to be cribbing, saying that, hey, I can't do a thing because of my boss, right? So that's the dichotomy. So so that's where probably the whole thing about transparency comes in. What would you say?
Yeah. Okay. So I think water cooler conversations is good for a sketch, it's good for a joke, but ultimately the true leaders are the ones who swim against the stream, who swim upstream. And I think we've all been guilty of, at times, going with our bosses for a smoke or for a time out. But then you realize, boss, you have to be honest to yourself, right? I have been very honest about it in terms of uh, because our opinions are our opinions and we're all outliers in a certain way, which basically means we like to swim upstream, we don't follow formula, and we like to surprise people around us with our thoughts and way we look. And that's why we have this discussion today. So this entire concept of water cooler conversation, this entire concept of yes man, it's going to exist even before us, after us, and in the future also. But I think each one to his own. Ultimately, you have to develop your own flavor of leadership. Because leadership is not black or white. There are different colors to leadership. It's not binary, 0 or 1. It could be violet, indigo, orange, red, yellow, all the colors. That's how you look at it from there.
Yeah, which brings me to the thought that you would oftentimes find the perception that a leader is a person who speaks the most, who is the most compelling orator, who kind of is the life of the party, who is equally brilliant, uh, versus the observant, silent leader who may not be all of those things that I said, right? So how do you compare and contrast, and what is your opinion about the personality of a leader, making an impact or not?
So I think an example of leader for me is this gentleman called Michael Scott from The Office. So I don't know if Anupam, you've seen The Office. It's a sketch. It's one of the most popular comedies on the American circuit. It's got this
Right.
man called Steve Carell who acted as Michael Scott. And he's somebody, when you look at him in the first instant, you would think that this guy is so repulsive, so obnoxious. But he actually loves his team a lot. And his team has got characters who are prototypes of every employee you would meet. There's an aspirational employee, there's an employee who does not know what he or she is doing. You have somebody from the accounts team, somebody from the finance team, somebody from the HR team, and everybody's doing their own thing. And this fellow comes in and does his own thing, this leader, which is Michael Scott. So I think a leader's a fulcrum or a mixture of all this and much more. A leader can be somebody who can be open, who can be honest, who can be vulnerable. A leader, somebody you can crack a joke with, have fun with, lead a shoulder to, and also listen to. I think what is really important for a leader is to just be emotionally connected without losing objectivity, which basically means, yes, you have to be emotionally invested in your people. You have to understand their environment, their surroundings, where they're coming from, their aspirations, what they want from in life. And that should tie into what you want to do with the organization, which basically means we need to understand that we should be in love with our job, right? And you don't necessarily need to be in love with your company. I think once you take care of loving your job, then your company takes care of itself.
Oh, no, very well said. Like, I mean, oh, if you're truthful to your trade, right, to your profession, then you are anyway a leader in the making, right? And then every leader should look out for such people. Which brings me to the point, with nice young friends around us like Adarsha, how would you recommend for them to look forward to groom themselves into leaders?
I think somebody like Adarsh or somebody of their age, I think the young population or the young generation, I don't know how young they are or how old they are. I think travel as much as you can, talk to as many people as you can, spend less time on the phone, spend more time with people, try to understand people's perspectives because everybody comes with their own life story. Everybody comes with their own struggles. Everybody comes with their own journey. Everybody has got different destinations, but I think that journey is very important. So I think we need to respect that in every person, and somewhere those are the cues which you need for being an effective leader: understanding, reacting, and then responding. Because in terms of doing work, technical work, in terms of assigning work, that's anybody can do that.
Yeah.
AI will take care of that very well, I'm sure. But the point is, how well can you marry storytelling with emotional intelligence? How well do you understand your employees? How well do you look at the future? Because somebody who is emotionally intelligent can also look at the future and predict the future, can also look back in history and say, you know what, these are the mistakes we made. These are the failures we made. This is my billboard of all the failures I have had in life. So today, if I talk to you about my failures, which I have spoken to you, right, it makes me more open, more honest, more fallible as a person, and it makes me more real as a person. I'm not a man of steel. I have my kryptonite. I have my follies. I have my weaknesses. But as a leader, I'm open to change. Now, if you look around you, Anupam, how many leaders can we count on a fingers like that? You'll get your answer.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. You'll get your answer. Everything right now sugar coated. Everything right now has a link to it. Everything right now has a filter to it. Nobody really wants to be open, honest, and vulnerable anymore. I think we're living in a world where everybody wants to be heard, everybody wants to be listened, nobody wants to be judged. So the leader has a very, very tricky role to play. You have to manage people, you have to work with people, you have to lead people, you have to be one of them, and you also have to strike a chord and play the balancing factor.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree. See, I think one litmus test for a leader is, when you or someone else calls you back if you were a boss for that person, or you call someone back if that person was a boss for you. Years later, out of no interaction, no existing interaction, or no selfish interest, and you still call back and you just ask a genuine, hey, how are you, right? And you mean it, and you still want to talk about the profession, about how things are going in business, how the world has moved, how their lives have moved on. I think that is a great test, because oftentimes you would find in today's world, like you said, there are filters. So if I'm working with you today, if X is working with Y today, they appear to be very very close to each other. But once the show is over, one of them leaves the organization and goes, they forget each other for forever, right? So I think that's another way of checking and validating. So Shekhar, it's been a nice, interesting little discussion. Albeit we were a little stumped by technology, but that said, I think we are all good. And thank you so much for your time. If there are any parting thoughts you want to share with the forum, the Curated Circle community, which is so glad and proud to have you on as a speaker. So, any parting thoughts, please?
So I think one abiding philosophy I live by is the fact that I have the magical power of impacting, influencing, entertaining, and engaging, inspiring people. I know that. I know that's my magical power. Now, how I do it, why I do it, when I do it, that's totally up to me. I know that's my power. I think we all need to look deep within ourselves and understand what is our magical power. What is our magical power as a leader? Do we have the power of influencing? Do we have the power of mentoring? Are we best friends of ourselves? I think that's important. We are living in a world which is full of grief, full of loneliness, full of sadness. It's not like the bed of roses which Archie's promised, not Archie Andrews, Archie Comics promised, because I don't think the world lives like that. I think we have to manage our own struggles. We have to manage our own failures. And I think it all boils down to how well do you understand yourself from your core. That tomorrow, if I break down, if I have a failure, can I wake up tomorrow and go and be limitless? I think that's important. And I think we have to be adaptable. Leaders have to be adaptable. They have to be limitless. They have to have a high sense of emotion that way. more than high IQ, because I don't think your results really make a difference. It's your journey, it's your perspective, and it's your understanding out of it that really makes a difference. And I think our education system has to change. The way we look at life has to change. That change has to happen. I think that's important.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Shekhar, for being on the show. And
thanks, Anupam. Thank you.
Looking forward to chatting again.
It was like it was almost like come to a master chef, right? So clinical and so thorough and so surgical. I almost thought that you would give a dish to